Welcome back to Danielle O'Terry's Italy. If you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, know that this is actually also a video episode. It's not that exciting. I'm just sitting on my couch. But you can see the O'Terry sign behind me that once belonged to my grandfather at his Italian butcher shop in the Bronx. This hand-painted sign was on one side of the delivery truck. There was a sign on the other side as well, which my brother has. And this is, of course, the inspiration for the beautiful new logo that I have designed so lovingly by Olivia Kingsley and Aaron Pinkley of Good Hands Studio. They were guests of a tour that I did in Cilento with artist Jenny Kroik a couple of years ago, and they've become friends and made this beautiful logo for me. So this week, I have a Q&A episode for you, and it's going to answer just one question that comes to me from Instagram, and that is, what the heck is a UNESCO World Heritage Site? It seems like something important, but I have no idea what it is. And that's a really good question. And it also reminds me that before we get started answering this question, if you enjoy this podcast and you have questions of your own, consider becoming a paid subscriber, because paid subscribers are invited to a monthly Q&A. And this month it is happening on July 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern via Zoom. And you can bring your trip questions, your curiosities, anything you're wondering about Italian travel, culture, or history. And also don't miss this month's Destination Deep Dive on Florence. It's happening July 31st. And last month we explored Cilento. Next month, well, I'll tell you on Thursday where we're going next month. But this month, we're going to Florence. Italy has more UNESCO sites than any other country in the world. And China is right behind. And think about the size of Italy as compared to China. So Italy still holds the crown. And that sounds impressive, and it is. But what does a UNESCO designation really mean? So let's start at the beginning. UNESCO stands for the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Not that exciting. But it was created in the aftermath of World War II when nations were thinking hard about how to preserve peace. And they understood that cultural understanding was a really important part of that mission. So in 1972, UNESCO adopted the World Heritage Convention, and they created this now famous list of sites of outstanding universal value. So what does that mean for someone like you who's planning a trip to Italy? If you're looking for unique or interesting experiences, but Instagram keeps showing you nothing but spritzes and wine windows, take a look at the UNESCO list. To get on that list, a country must nominate a site and prove that it meets at least one of 10 criteria. Now, these include things like being a masterpiece of human creative genius. That's a lot. Bearing exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition or containing superlative natural beauty. These are big descriptors and big criteria to fill. And Italy's list includes really famous things like the historic centers of Florence and Rome, the archaeological zones of Pompeii, as well as entire regions like the Dolomites or the Val d'Orcia in Tuscany. But this is where it gets interesting. Once a site is inscribed on the list, money and attention follow. That can be used for conservation, restoration, and tourism. Of course, there's also a prestige, which can help drive visitors and also private investment. But there's also a critique to this as well. There are some heritage experts that argue that the designation has become too political, that countries often lobby for sites with the highest tourism potential, and they're not necessarily looking after the sites that actually need the most protection. Like, for example, the ones that are not near something famous or near a train line or an airport where tourists can easily get there. Others say the list has become bloated and that once a site is on it, the pressure to monetize through tourism really overwhelms the original intention, which is about preservation. So let's take an example. The city of Matera in the region of Basilicata. Matera became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1993 for its Sassi cave dwellings. These are these ancient homes carved into the rock that have been inhabited for thousands of years. Matera is one of the oldest cities on earth, perhaps the third oldest city right after Aleppo. It has a fascinating heritage, and I'm definitely going to get into Matera in a future destination deep dive. It fell into a terrible period of decline in the period around World War II. This is where the government was sending people organizing against the fascist government in order to silence them and get them away from their organizing activities. Even though this is a city in Italy, at that time, it was so separate. And it is also the subject of the book, Christ Stopped at Eboli. After World War II, the Sassi were even forcibly evacuated because of the grinding poverty that was there, and they called it unfit for human habitation. Then there was a period of silence, and then Renaissance. And that led to people returning to Matera, to the ancient history of the Sassi and reclaiming them. And then the UNESCO designation really accelerated the story. It attracted investment, both public and private. Locals began receiving funds that they could use to restore the cave homes, and tourism picked up. And by the time Matera was named a European Capital of Culture in 2019, it had transformed into a sought-after destination. It's such a fantastic place to go. Today, it's a place where you can stay in a luxury cave hotel, have a Michelin-star dinner with a view, and still be very much in touch with the history of both pain and poverty, as well as its glory period in the Middle Ages. It's amazing. Still, critics note that the influx of money and tourists has pushed out some residents. It has led to over-tourism in the high season. So the UNESCO brand can spark renewal, and it can also sanitize the rough edges that make a place authentic in the first place. So it's really a tightrope walk between preservation and gentrification. And not all the sites benefit equally. The funding from UNESCO is pretty modest, sometimes symbolic. So if it's a big, important site, it might be a drop in the bucket. And the countries are expected to carry most of the financial burden. So in places where the infrastructure is weak or government support is limited, this designation could bring more tourists than the site can handle. And Venice is the best example of that. It has long been on UNESCO's radar due to its struggle with the cruise ship industry, mass tourism, and rising water levels. And it was recently placed on UNESCO's in danger watch list, not because there's a lack of tourism money, but because the political will to act meaningfully has been a little mouchade, as we say in the Italian-American community. So when you're standing in front of a UNESCO World Heritage plaque in Italy, know that you're in a place that is deemed globally significant. The question is whether this place will be lovingly preserved, overrun, or something in between. So I am a big advocate for having a few key ingredients in every Italy itinerary, no matter who you're traveling with, no matter what the goals for your trip are, whether it's, a bucket list trip to run around and see everything, or you really want to go to Italy to relax and unplug. I think that you should engage with something familiar, something that you already like to do. I think you should do something unfamiliar, something that completely challenges you that you wouldn't be able to do at home or in another country, something that is uniquely Italian. I think that you should definitely have some downtime, and I think you should have an Indiana Jones experience, which is going to be something related to archaeology, history, or maybe some sort of a dramatic hike in nature. And finding the Indiana Jones experience might be the most daunting if you're unfamiliar with Italy, and the UNESCO list is a really good place to get some ideas. Now, as I mentioned, you've got the Historic Center of Florence and Venice and Rome, you've got Pompeii on the list, but then there are a few other sites that maybe you've never heard of that offer deep beauty and cultural insight and don't have the massive crowds. So number one for me is something called the Certosa di Padula. It is a giant Carthusian monastery in the middle of nowhere in the Cilento Vallo di Diano National Park. So this is in the region of Campania, and this is the largest monastery in Europe. It's no longer used as a monastery. It's a masterpiece of architecture. It was built in 1306 and then later expanded. And it includes this enormous cloister, lavish chapels, intricate stonework, and it's one of the most beautiful, peaceful places I have ever visited. The village of Padula, the medieval village, is right above it, which you can see from within the cloister. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'm not religious and cloisters and monks don't really sound that exciting to me, it really is a place that surprises you. First of all, the natural setting is beautiful. And if you like to be out in nature, if you want to see the beautiful rolling southern Italian countryside, the drive to get there is very easy and straightforward on a highway with almost no traffic. And then when you come to the monastery, there's a small walkway that leads to a much larger walkway. And really just the experience of getting there is one of pilgrimage, and it's quite beautiful. And then it has a fascinating history. There, in particular, when you arrive, there is this giant pan. I mean, it's the size of a Buick. And it's for making an omelet because of a legend of a king who was passing through and having made an omelet for this king with something like, I don't know, 5,000 eggs. If you look online, the actual number of eggs is recorded. And every year there is a medieval festival at the Certosa where they actually reenact this and make that omelet. It sounds a little silly, but it's fun. And this monastery set in the middle of nowhere is a wonderful place to walk, to wander, to experience history. You know, maybe bring along your AirPods, your earphones, listen to some music, and really blend into a place that is unlike anything that you can experience in the United States. Another idea is to go to the city of Urbino. And the historic center of Urbino, including the Ducal Palace, was designated by UNESCO in 1998. Urbino was a Renaissance powerhouse under Federico da Montefeltro, who built the spectacular Ducal Palace. And it is a place where you see medieval history meeting the Renaissance, and the architecture is absolutely extraordinary. Urbino is in the region of Le Marche, which, if you want to have an experience of Tuscany without the crowds in terms of landscape, Le Marche is an excellent option. Urbino is larger than a town, smaller than a city. It's definitely a university town, so if you go during the school year, you will see a lot of students there. It's very hilly. Wear your most comfortable shoes, but it really feels like you're stepping into the past. And there's so much to see in the Ducal Palace, so much beautiful art, so many beautiful views from the castle itself, and very, very few tourists. Now, a third option that I recommend is in Sicily, and that is the Arab Norman cathedrals in Palermo, Monreale, which is right outside of Palermo, and Cefalù. And this was designated fairly recently in 2015. And this group of buildings showcases this unique, absolutely unique in the world, Arab, Norman, and Byzantine fusion of culture, which happened in 12th century Sicily. And the highlights are mosaics and domes and decorative motifs that bring together all of these symbols that come from different cultures. The Cappella Palatina in particular has a ceiling filled with the little niches that you see in Islamic architecture. The Cathedral of Monreale is completely covered in mosaics. And unlike most churches in Italy, especially in Rome, it was never refabricated. It never changed shape within the interior. So your experience of going inside of that cathedral is the same one that a medieval Sicilian would have had. It is overwhelmingly beautiful. And similarly at Cefalù, you see this beautiful fusion of Arab and Byzantine and Norman architecture coming together. It's unlike anything else in the world. It's so beautiful. Even if you have no appreciation of art or architecture, you would have to be dead inside to not think that these buildings are beautiful. You're not dead inside, right? No. Now, there are things on the list which aren't places, but are events. And there's one that I am particularly drawn to called La Transumanza, which is the seasonal droving of livestock from the Abruzzo to the southern greener pastures of Molise in Puglia in the winter. So it's not a physical site, but it is a traditional practice. And there are still a few people that carry this out, and you can actually join them as a tourist. This is something that I'm seriously thinking about doing next year, even though I don't really like horses or sheep or camping. goes against all of my interests, but it's such a fascinating tradition. It preserves biodiversity, it preserves cultural heritage, and it's such a part of the Italian experience. I think it's almost in the DNA of Italians, and I would really like to understand this firsthand, especially because I am a student of the Renaissance, and Florence's wealth was built off of textiles and wool. And of course, that was all made from sheep being herded from Abruzzo to Molise and Puglia. And so this is just another example of something on the UNESCO list that maybe can become a part of your vacation, especially if, unlike me, you actually like camping and horses and being outside when it's cold. This might be something you might really want to participate in. If you do, let me know. I can help you out with that. So if you're looking for new ideas, if you're looking to put an Indiana Jones experience on the list, take a look. UNESCO has some really great ideas, and there's stuff in every single region. You'll find stuff in Sardinia, in the Dolomites, in Alto Adige, and most of them probably, are things you've never heard of. These are things that you can uniquely experience in Italy, and so I highly recommend taking a look at the list. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video episode, let me know. As you can tell, I'm experimenting with all sorts of formats, trying new software. Now I'm trying Riverside instead of Descript. Descript keeps adding all these AI features that make it more difficult to use. Let me know, keep me posted. If you're enjoying this, leave a review. This is such a deeply interactive experience for me, and the more you communicate with me, the better I can make it and the better I can serve you. I will see you next week.